Hello. Do you know, I think that this episode in many ways encapsulates my feelings about Terry Nation. Um, and I am a little bit concerned that those feelings are becoming pathological, which is not healthy, is it? But the thing is, this episode is a retread of so many things that have gone on before in Doctor Who. Not just in Terry Nation stories, but more often than not in Terry Nation stories. We've got the Daleks, obviously. We've got a TARDIS crew that's been split up, obviously, but that's not his fault particularly. That always happens. But we've got the Iridians, which are a bit like the Thals, and a bit like the Menoptera, and probably a bit like somebody from Keys and Marinus, and a bit wishy-washy really, and not really sketched out, and a big bit of dialogue dump, and it all to do with great ecological changes. So in this case, the suns came close to the planet and the waters boiled away, and da. We've got the Maya Beast, which is a bit like the Slither really, and that's all wibbly and attacking this lot, and then we've got the Daleks bullying that lot, and then we've got the Daleks, which are terribly scary and horrible and nasty, and then they get caught out with the most ridiculous, silly trap where basically Ian comes up with the good idea of doing a false floor that the Dalek will fall in, which is very similar to how Winnie the Pooh and his friends intend to catch the Baxen in the Winnie the Pooh. You see, it's just if you take apart the individual components of this story, it's just a bit poor. Apart from the leads, because the leads are always good at the minute, and within that, Vicky's a breath of fresh air. She's really provides a spunk and a spark to it, which really plays well with the other lot, and gives it a new lease of life. There's so many components to it that just feel like retreads, like rehashes of stuff that's gone before, and it's just damn frustrating. You think Doctor Who should be better than this, and yet, whenever the Daleks are in Doctor Who, it's exciting. There's just a frisson, that there's just a thing in the air, and it's thrilling and it's compelling, and you can't help, even when the Daleks are being crap themselves. There's one point where one Dalek has a bitch at another Dalek, which is very un-Dalek-like behaviour. You don't get Daleks acting like that in any of the Dalek story. Perhaps you do in other Dalek stories. There's lots of Dalek stories to watch, but it just seemed really pronounced in this. But there's always a bit of energy. There's always a bit of a spark. And if the production, if moments like digging out the TARDIS results in a completely flat landscape, not a big pit, but a flat landscape in the TARDIS that has been buried in God knows how many tons of sand by two Iridians with like toothbrushes clearing it off, even things like that, there's just a spark, an energy. And I think Hartnell feels it as well. He seems to really get off on the Daleks. He seems to think they're good. And I get the feeling that Jacqueline Hill, there's just something about them now that's made... They've become one of the structures of the programme. They've just... A story with Daleks in is defined by the fact it's got Daleks in, but to a tiny, tiny extent, a story without Daleks in is also defined as being a story without Daleks. What a nonsense thing to say, but it's true. I think it's true. What I'm basically trying to say is this episode, if you look at it objectively, is poor, but it's a Dalek story, and I like Dalek stories. Everybody likes Dalek stories. Let's hope it all fails miserably toward the end and we can come up with some better critique of it. Anyway,